if you ever bought a treadmill and you brought it home and it gathered dust in the attic, right? Why don't you go to the treadmill? Why do people join a gym and then they never show up, right? That's the force that I call resistance.
Welcome back to Mind Game. I'm your host, Casey Bannon, and today I'm honored to be joined on the show by one of my favorite authors of all time, Mr. Steven Pressfield. Now, golf fans, you may know him as the writer and author of The Legend of Bagger Vance, but it's actually another book of his, The War of Art, that first made me a fan. In that book, he discusses the idea of what he calls resistance, that miserable, painful, and invisible force that prevents you from writing the book you've always talked about writing, starting your own business, or maybe even just breaking 80 for the first time. Steven is a prolific writer with many other works to his name, including Do the Work, Turning Pro, Gates of Fire, and Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit, which could also be the title of my memoir. In addition to being a true golf fan, Steven is one of the great voices of this generation on discipline, creativity, and the human spirit, which sounds like the perfect guest for Mind Game. Now, I should mention I traveled out to record this one in Santa Monica just after the devastating fires that swept through the LA area, and all of us here at TGJ are sending our thoughts and best wishes to everyone that was affected by this disaster. A special thanks to our sponsors for Mind Game, that's Titleist and AG1, who we'll hear from a bit later on, and a huge thank you, as always, to the members of the Golfers Journal, aka the Broken Tea Society, for making this show possible. If you enjoy the show and would like to see it continue, best way to do so is to become a member at golfersjournal.com/subscribe. Thanks for listening, everyone, and I hope you get something out of this chat with Steven Pressfield. Are you playing much golf still?
No. In fact, my club's burned up, of course, but no, I rarely get to get out, Too bad.
Yeah.
It's actually... Are we talking? Is it rolling?
Yeah, we can go.
Actually, there were 4 courses around here that I used to kind of bounce around to. They've all, 3 of them have been let go to seed. And the other one was converted into an orange grove.
No kidding.
So
which courses were those?
They were Elkins Ranch is the one that turned into an orange grove. Malibu Country Club was let go to seed, and then Lost Canyons, 2 courses. I think it's Tom Fazio designed them. They were really nice courses, and I guess they just couldn't support themselves. The water cost so much or whatever, and they just let them go.
Yeah.
So I don't play too much these days.
That's a shame. Are you going to get a new set of clubs? Or?
Yeah, I will. Yeah, okay. I will. I really want to get out there just for my, mental health. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell me what the last couple of weeks have been like for you. I mean, you mentioned you sent me this. I mean, it was a terribly tragic email, but you had this great spin on it, which if anyone's read your work, of course, but it said, "I'm okay. The house is gone, but I'm okay." It's just like golf,
Yeah.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah. It's been. I had a really good attitude at the start. It's been harder since then, harder than I thought it would be. Not too bad in the daylight, but at night, you start to think about. Your mind goes down these rabbit holes of, are we ever going to get out of this thing? How much is it going to cost? Blah 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 blah. So it's hard. I think a lot of people are really taking it hard, and I'm one of them. But this is the way the cookie crumbles, and there's no choice except to go through it to the end.
Yeah. What have you learned about the things that you value through having something like losing your home?
It's funny. We went up there for the first time a few days ago to see the actual house, and of course it's all ashes. Everything there's nothing left, but the trees. We have like a few really nice trees around, a big sycamore and a great oak and a huge eucalyptus out there, and they were okay, and so that cheered me up quite a bit, And of course, there are pockets of vegetation that somehow are, in good shape. So it hasn't really hit me yet, losing the house. Just when I think about something like a photo I had of me when I was a baby when my dad was in the Navy, blah blah, and that's gone. Things like that,
Yes, sentimental things.
Yeah.
But you are no stranger to ups and downs, in your lifetime. I mean, the most remarkable thing I think about your resume is that there are many remarkable things, but the one that stands out is you wrote books. You wrote for 20 years without having anything published.
Yeah,
And then
closer to 30,
maybe
actually.
30.
Yeah.
And then the first one that's published is The Legend of Bagger Vance. Well, why didn't you quit, I guess, during that time period?
I tried to quit many times. I tried to go straight or take a straight job or something like that, like a job in advertising as a copywriter or something like that. But I would be so depressed at the end of the day that the only thing that kind of restored my sanity was to sit down and try to write some kind of fiction. And even though it was going nowhere, nobody was interested, blah, 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 it kept my head on straight. So it was just, I tried to have a plan B, but it just didn't work for me.
And you just wrote until you found,
Yeah, it just kept going.
Was there a magic moment in there, like when you knew, tell me about when the idea for Bagger Vance sort of crystallized in your mind?
There were a bunch of kind of moments where you felt like your feet had finally hit the ground a little bit. I had like a career, maybe a 10-year career as a screenwriter. Mm-hmm. And that was not exactly what I wanted to do, but at least I was making money off of that, mainly because I got teamed up with an established writer, a guy named Ron Shusett, who did the first Alien and Total Recall, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so that was a magic moment in the sense of feeling like I wasn't just alone in space floating around. And then kind of at the end of that period, after about a 10-year period, the idea for The Legend of Bagger Vance just kind of came to me and seized me. And I write about this in Government Cheese, where I don't know. Do you want to hear what he would?
Absolutely, that's what we're here for.
So I don't know how much detail you want to go into, but the gist of it was, I went immediately to my movie agent and I told him I've got bad news and I got worse news, and so I said the bad news is I have an idea that I really want to do, but it's a book. It's not a movie. So to my agent, that was really bad news because he's been working on my career for 10 years to get me out there to take a book. You lose all credibility overnight. And I said, and the worst news is it's a book about golf. And my agent was a golfer and is a golfer. Was like a really enthusiast, but he knew a book about golf. What could that, So, but I was just seized by it. So basically, my agent fired me at that point, and he said to me, I remember, I'm probably going into more detail than you want to hear,
please.
But he said, look, why don't you just write this book like on the side, write it on the weekends, but keep your movie career going, keep going to meetings and keep doing that sort of stuff. And I thought about that for about 10 minutes, and I just said, I was just so seized by this idea that I just said, I can't do it. I got to go full tilt on this, and there's no other way. And so basically he fired me, and we had a parting of the ways, and I just went ahead and wrote the book.
And so you spent, 9 months or something?
Something like that. It wasn't very long, and I had no real thought that it would even be published because I thought it was a really dumb idea. The only book that was sort of like that was Golf in the Kingdom, kind of examining the sort of mystical aspects of golf, And I thought, who's going to be interested in this book, But I was just so seized by the idea that I just had to do it.
How did you make ends meet during this time?
I had some money from my movie career. Mm-hmm. Not much, but enough. I could certainly live for the 9 months that it took to write the book.
And is there pressure when you sort of leave your day job to do a book like this? I mean, you say that you don't.
There is pressure, but I was just so seized by it, I just couldn't not do it.
You had to do it. Well, I have some deeper questions about the themes in that book. But I do want to, I have read The War of Art probably. 5 times before this. I reread it in advance of this. It was very influential to me in college. Why do you think, in this book, you introduced this idea of resistance? I don't know how many millions of copies you sold now. So if people are listening to this and they haven't read it, excuse us for skipping over, the big thing. You should go and read it. Why do you think in hindsight that book connected with so many people. Did you expect that book,
No,
to connect like that?
no.
No.
In fact, I really thought, first of all, that it was only for writers. I didn't think it would be for creative people, comedians, photographers, actors, and the people that have really responded to it. And also, I wasn't even sure, the idea of resistance and so on and so forth was in my head. I knew I experienced it, but a part of me thought, well, I must be like the only one that's dealing with this, or there are only a few of us dealing with this. So I was very surprised that it hit such a universal chord. But it took a long time. It took like about 10 years for the book to kind of get some traction. And the only thing that really sort of got it moving was, well, two things. Was one, I did an interview with Oprah, and another one with Joe Rogan.
That helps.
And that
Those two help.
kind of put it up into orbit. And before then, it was just sort of modestly selling.
Okay. All right. When did it become clear that resistance was something different than procrastination? Or
in my mind, you mean?
Yeah, in your mind. That this was this much bigger force at play than
It
just...
always was clear to me.
Was
Yeah,
it?
Yeah. That it was this big thing of which procrastination was just one part.
One part.
Yeah.
And so I know you've explained this many times, but what do you think it actually is,
You mean the qualities of it, or the deeper meaning?
Well, maybe if we could start with the qualities of
Okay.
it. Yeah.
I mean, to me, resistance with a capital R is that force. If we had a keyboard here in front of me, if we're writers and we're going to sit down, you sit down to the keyboard and you can feel, or I can feel, a negative force radiating off that keyboard, trying to push me away, right? It's trying to stop me from doing my work, right? And that force, it's the same sort of thing of if you ever bought a treadmill and you brought it home and it gathered dust in the attic, right? Why don't you go to the treadmill? Why do people join a gym and then they never show up, right? That's the force that I call resistance. It's just stopping you from doing what you know you should do, right? And the forms of that, there are many forms, but one of them is procrastination, right? We say, I'm going to do it, I'm just going to do it tomorrow. And another big one is distraction. We go down rabbit holes of, social media and stuff like that. And fear is sort of the overriding emotion of this thing, right? We're afraid to do what we know we have to do because we think we're going to fail, or we're afraid even more that we're going to succeed. And then you get into kind of self-doubt, things like that, the voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, this idea that you think you want to work on, Golf Journal, who's going to buy it? We're never going to find subscribers. It's going to cost a fortune. How are we going to find blah, blah, all of those reasons that are usually valid. It is hard to do these kind of things. You write a symphony or whatever it is. So that voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough, this is never going to work, you're going to fail, that's all falls under the heading of resistance. It's the devil. It's this negative force that's trying to stop you from, you always hear this thing, whatever it is, success is on the other side of fear. That fear, that's resistance.
Okay, so if resistance is a force, what's on the opposite end of the spectrum of that? What is that?
The positive side.
Yeah,
of
the
that.
positive side.
The positive side is I'm a big believer in, as I'm sure you is in the muse, in the goddess that inspires us creatively. Like I just was talking about how I was seized with the idea for the Legend of Bagger Vance, and I just had to do it in spite of everything else. That's the positive force, right? There is, ideas come to us to start a magazine, to do any kind of a golf thing, Casey. And that's a living thing, like a baby inside of a mother, right? It wants to be born, it wants to come out, it wants to exist in the material world, and not only as a thought or a dream in your mind. And so the two of them are kind of opposed to each other. Resistance trying to stop it, and the dream trying to be born into material existence.
Yeah. So it's this big epic fight.
It is.
At all times.
Yeah.
And one thing you say, I guess the solution to this is that you just sit down, right? You just
the
sit down.
Solution is always the same. It's action.
It's action.
And it's easy to say and hard to do.
Yeah.
But the solution is action.
Yeah. Have you ever, I'm sure you have, but The question I have reading that book is like, why would we even have a force like resistance in the, what purpose is
Uh-huh.
it? It kind of is the same question I have about ego, which I don't really totally understand. Like, all
Neither
these
do I.
all these, I can't form a mental picture in my mind of, the ego. But even this, you wonder if this is a natural force, why it even occurs, why we have something like this. And I guess it's, many people have explored this. Why does good need evil? Why does, light need the dark? All those things. What do you make of that question?
Here's my theory, having thought about this quite a bit. And it almost even goes back to the Garden of Eden and that kind of thing. But if we think of our psyche as containing the larger self, capital S self, like in the Jungian sense, the self that includes the collective unconscious, the archetypes of the unconscious, intuition, dreams, stuff like that we can't really put our finger on. And in the middle of that larger self is the ego, a very small dot of the ego. The ego being where we identify as I, and where we have wants and desires and fears, and our central consciousness here is selfish, self-absorbed, fearful, corrupt, etc. And we live in the ego. Most of us live in the ego. I'm giving you a longer version maybe than you want,
That's
Casey,
great.
but most of us live in the ego our entire lives, and we don't think that there is anything else, right? But if let's say you're a writer, you're an artist, you're a musician, or whatever it is, like when I had that calling to write The Legend of Bagger Vance, what was happening was, on the deeper level, in my opinion, the self, the greater self, which the muse, the goddess, whatever these, was trying to pull me in, I shift my identity from the ego to the self, right? To open myself up to inspiration, to intuition, to just letting it flow, right? The ego is threatened by that, because if we shift our identity from the ego to the self, the ego's out of a job, right? And so, in my opinion, it's the ego that creates resistance. The ego being fearful and selfish and corrupt and duplicitous. The ego comes up with all of these reasons, you're not good enough, et cetera, to stop us from expanding the seat of our consciousness into the self, into the greater self. That's my opinion for where it comes from.
Mind Game is all about the pursuit of better. And how does the best get better? Well, we're going to find out, because now there's a new Titleist Pro V1 and Pro V1X in play. That's right, 25 years after the first Pro V was teed up, Titleist has taken ball performance to new heights. Their R&D team asked tour players a simple question: what more do you want out of the Pro V1 and Pro V1X? The answer: more spin on scoring shots into the green and more speed off the tee. Both models do just that and are already being used on tour by Will Zalatoris, Wyndham Clark, and my boy, Ludwig Oberg. Now, Pro V1 is a great place to start if you've never been properly fit for a ball, but personally, I play the Pro V1X, and many out there are switching to the Pro V1X left dash. So here's what you need to do. Head to Titleist.com to learn more about all the new Pro V1 models for 2025, and then put one in play. It's the number one ball in golf, and it just got better.
Resistance, when resistance is defeating us, we want to sit down and do our work, our writing, our art, or whatever it is, but we keep procrastinating, we keep blowing ourselves off. What we're really doing is we're acting as amateurs. We're thinking in an amateur kind of a way. And I mean, amateur golf, when Bobby Jones was in it, was like, that was the pinnacle, right?
Right.
That was the ideal. But when I'm talking about it now, I'm talking about sort of a dabbler, a weekend warrior, somebody that's not really taking it seriously, like that goes to the gym and sort of, fucks around, doesn't really, So the mind shift to that is the shift of becoming a professional, and to overcome the resistance, overcome this force. And a professional, this is really still in the ego, in the consciousness, acts differently, has professional habits as opposed to amateur habits. Like if you think about Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or somebody like that, they will play hurt. They'll play through anything. If Kobe Bryant has to learn to do a turnaround fadeaway jumper from the corner, he will study the footwork of Michael Jordan. He'll do it 10,000 times, like Steph Curry or whatever it is. And the same thing, I think, as a writer or any kind of an artist, when you shift from the mindset of an amateur to a professional, now you start to work every day, right? In golf, it's kind of the same thing. If we were to turn pro tomorrow and I had to support our families on it, we would no longer be hitting drivers down the range, right? We would be chipping and working on the short game and the wedge game and putts from here to here, right? Because those are the money makers, right? We would have a whole different attitude. And if it was raining, we would go out to the range to practice in the rain because we know we're going to have to do that at some point. So that's the difference in my mind between an amateur mindset and a professional mindset.
And anybody can make
Anybody can make it. It's free. All you have to do is flip the switch in your mind.
Yeah. There's a quote that you had in that book that I wanted to ask you about, which is the professional does his work out of love. However, they've learned that too much love can be a bad thing, which is, amateur, comes from the Latin word of, to love.
Yeah.
So Bobby Jones, these guys, they love the game.
Yeah.
But there's, as you write, there's a downside to loving something too much. What did you mean by that?
It's like, is it Scotty Scheffler who just took like a month off or something like that, or hurt himself or something?
Hurt his hand, yeah.
I mean, but even if he hadn't hurt his hand, you know that you can get so obsessed with a game like golf that you're just beating balls and you're driving yourself crazy. There's a certain, if you've ever watched thoroughbred racehorses being trained, they don't really work them that hard. They run, for a little bit during the day, and then a lot of the rest of the time they're kind of taking it, a little bit easy. And I think that that's smart because there's a limit to what the human nervous system or the animal nervous system can stand. And so you can love it too much. You can become too obsessed with something. A professional knows you got to take a break every once in a while and give yourself a little slack and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think anyone that has been super, I'm sure you have an example of this, but I read that I thought of a project I had done when I was maybe 23, 24 that I spent 48 hours straight on. I was really inspired by it. I was very manic about it and stayed up for 2 days doing it, put it out, and it really didn't get any sort of reception, right? And I think I had committed myself to this idea of this is so great. I love it so much that other people will feel the same. And that feeling afterwards was devastating. I mean, it took me I still think about it. It was very painful, right? And so that developed somewhat of I became a bit more cold to the work that I was doing. I didn't attach my emotions to how this thing was perceived. You write it. Tell me about if this was the same feeling you had when you wrote your first screenplay, your first was it King Kong?
Oh, that was one of the first ones that ever got. King Kong Lives, one of the worst movies of all time, if you're any older than 8 years old. But that wasn't the first. I'm not. But I think let me ask you this, Casey.
Sure.
What did you take away from that 48-hour thing when you looked back on
it? Just that attaching yourself to the results is just a losing strategy. I was enamored with the process, but the entire time I was like, I could have gone to sleep. I could have taken a break, but I wanted this thing done so that I could feel the satisfaction, the reception to it. I wanted validation from people, and so I had to finish it. I had to get through it, right? And I was going crazy, But then when people didn't care, it didn't change my life at all. You realize that, like you're saying, being a professional is just doing that day in and day out, just not one. You're not there to hit a home run every once in a while.
Yeah.
This is a much longer game. Yeah. And if you do that, you really will. You'll kill yourself. You'll go crazy.
You will.
And then if I wanted to do this for 30, 50 more years, that was not a winning strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like Rory McIlroy when he's under pressure. When are you going to win that next major, right?
Yeah.
You can see his mind in a really good way kind of settling down and saying, I know it's going to come. There's probably going to be more. And all I can do is my best each time around,
Yes.
And otherwise he will drive himself crazy.
Yeah. Even now, I think about a year, I think about the year and 5 years and 10 years at a time. Not every day. I do believe you wake up and you do your best and you work as hard as you can every day, but you can't live and die with each sort of, this waking up at 4 a.m., working 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
It's just not a sustainable strategy.
Yeah.
Some people it is, right? There are outliers. I'm sure you've seen them, but not everyone is
No.
Elon Musk,
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
And so it's okay to sort of develop like this distance between you and your work.
Yeah.
And that's what I got from that sort of point that you were making.
Are you familiar with Vedanta? It's kind of the root religion behind Buddhism and Hinduism stuff. Are you familiar with this at all?
I'm not familiar with the source text. I'm familiar in that.
Upanishads and that sort of stuff.
And was that not a inspiration behind Bagger Vance?
It actually the Bhagavad Gita, which is Hinduism, was the inspiration.
Bhagavad Gita.
But Vedanta kind of underlies that, and one of its principles is labor without attachment is prayer. In other words, they see attachment to the outcome as like the devil, the worst thing you can possibly do. And contrary to that, if you can work without attachment to the out, which is really hard, right?
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to put this out there, and I don't care if anybody loves, that kind of thing. But that's a really profound, principle and idea if you can do it. So attachment to the out. Rick Rubin.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with him, the grandfather or godfather of hip hop. That's kind of his thing. He wants, when he works with a band, he wants them to do what they love, not get in the studio trying to make a hit, which would be attachment to the outcome. But what do you really love? And let's do that. And we hope that what we love is going to be loved by the audience when it gets out there. But even if it isn't, keeping a cool head and knowing, like you say, 5 years, 10 years, it's a lifetime commitment.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard. It was definitely hard for me to let go of that attachment because it feels like in the process of eradicating some demons there, you can get rid of the fire too. And you don't want to get rid of the fire that stirs you up and is passionate about it.
I'm not so sure. I don't know if I would agree with you there.
No?
I think the fire burns
Either way.
no matter what.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a hard one.
Think about it.
Okay, I will. I'll have to do follow up in a couple years.
In a way, it takes even more fire to work without attachment because you're working for the love of the game. Only.
Yes.
And it's a great thing when you can do that. When it's really hard.
Yeah, but it's a different type of work. It feels much more like regimented and structured and kind of.
But the passion is
grindy.
Still there.
It is. It underlies it all.
But the professional mindset is the ability, in my opinion, to embrace the grind. I'm sure if you and I watched Tiger Woods over his, from age 4 to age 18, he was grinding like hell,
Yes.
having fun.
Yes.
But you don't get that swing without hitting, 1,000 balls a day.
Yeah. Well, speaking of spectrums, I read this great book. It was recommended to me a while ago. It's called Puer Aeternus.
Uh-huh.
And, this is another spectrum, right?
Uh-huh.
Somebody said, you are on the Puer side. You are, which is,
They said that to you?
Yes. This is Peter Pan, right? This is the boy who never grows up. He wants to be high all the time and live in the ethereal and all that stuff. And on the opposite side, there's the Synax, which is the wise old man, which is the word where the word senator comes from. And you have to start shifting your way to that. And the Synax, he shows up on a, cold winter day at early in the morning. He does his taxes, on time. And the Puer is throwing clubs on the golf course. It's flashy. It's probably more exciting. It's manic, but it's unstable.
Yeah.
Right?
Now, in terms of ego and self, the puer aeternus would be deep, deep in the ego.
In ego.
And the sort of maturation is kind of little by little toward the self.
Yes. What was your process of learning these things? What sort of text were you inspired by? People?
It's a great question. Just books that you read, on these subjects, and just, experience with it, like having had those 48-hour experiences, well, you're so committed, you're so attached, oh, this is going to be, great, and it just totally bombs, and you go, what the fuck, I'm thinking something's wrong here, right? I'm not thinking correctly about this. And then talking to other people who will say sort of the same thing that I'm just saying to you, and saying, well, that makes sense to me. And just to try to find a little sanity, slowly switching from the ego to the self, if you can.
Yeah. Were you surprised that you became, this very popular fiction writer, did you ever think that writing?
I wish I was more popular.
I think you are.
Yeah, I mean, again, I worked for so many years with no success at all that I sort of had to ask myself, just sort of what we were talking about, Casey, is why am I doing this? Is it okay to swear on this thing?
Absolutely.
Here? Okay, like, why the fuck am I doing this, There's no money in it. I'm not getting any recognition. And my family thinks I'm crazy. It's like, poor Steve, whatever happened to him, that kind of thing. And so the answer I came up with it's the love of the game. Like I said, I couldn't take another job. I would be too depressed. So I just thought, I'm just in this for the next, the next book and the next book and the next book.
And you keep doing it.
Yeah, whether it's a bomb or not.
Yeah. How did, you have this great line that says, the Marines taught you how to be miserable. Tell me about your experience with the Marines.
Well, that is sort of the secret of the Marine Corps.
Yes.
Is that I don't want to offend my brother Marines, but it's not, the Marine Corps is not like the Navy SEALs in that, like, you have to be a superhuman athlete that can overcome, the Marines will pretty much take anybody that walks in the door. But the attitude of the Marines is that no matter how miserable it gets, we're going to hang in there and keep doing it. In fact, Marines it's a reverse psychology where they love being miserable, Like if there's some, in combat, if there's some really shitty mission, the most dangerous, fucked up thing you can think of with the highest casualties, if that assignment gets given to anybody other than the Marines are really pissed off. It's like, how did these guys get that, And if you think about the events in Marine Corps history that the Marines are most proud of are not victories, but they're moments when they suffered the most and underwent, the most casualties, and that's what they're really proud of.
Yeah, they embrace the suffering.
They embrace the suffering, and it's the same way in being a writer or an artist, right? You're gonna live in that world of rejection and isolation, and people aren't going to understand you. Your family's going to think you're crazy, and you have to learn to love it.
Yeah. Why is it so important that people share, if they do creative work or any work really, that they share it, they get it out in front of the world? Not like a half-ass attempt, but that they really put it in front of the world for better or worse. Like, why is that process so important?
That's a great question, Casey. It's like art, I believe, whatever it is, a song you write, a dance or something like that, is a gift. If it works, like you said when you read The War of Art, you took something from that, So that's what should happen, right? The writer, the musician, the singer, whatever, puts something out there, and hopefully you and me and the audience, a singer sings some really sad song, and we remember our own pain, whatever, blah, 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 and we're kind of healed by it in some way. So it is important to do that. And it's also really important, I think, this gets into marketing, that if you're a professional, and this is really hard, it doesn't end when you finish the book or the album. You now have to sell it somehow,
That's very hard.
It's very hard because a typical artist personality is, introverted and not wanting to blow their own horn and not wanting to go out there and be the face of the brand. But that's the reality. It's really hard for me to do. But what I tell myself is I owe it to my characters in my book. They can't stand up for themselves.
Interesting.
I have to be their champion.
Yeah. Are you still affected? So fear, resistance, not something you really ever overcome. Fear definitely is
it never
something
goes
you
away.
never overcome. What about, poor feedback, negativity around your work? Is that something you ever overcome or you just get better at?
I try to avoid hearing it as much as I possibly can, because it does affect you, and it affects you because you've already got that negative voice of resistance in your head saying you're no good, you're a loser, this next one, maybe you've been good so far, but this next one's going to be terrible. You're going to be exposed for the phony that you are. That voice is already in your head. So I try not to, I don't read reviews or anything like that. And I myself, if somebody asks me to read something for them and give them feedback, I will never say anything negative.
Interesting.
I won't give any. I tell somebody I'm not going to critique anything. I'll only be positive.
Why is that?
Because I know how devastating a critique can be, and a bad thing, when you say something negative. And also because I realize that a lot of people who provide feedback on something don't know what they're talking about, including me. I'm not, it's a very rare person that can read a script or read a book or listen to music. I mean, the guy turned down the Beatles, right? It's a rare person that can really give feedback. And so you might give somebody, a great magazine, a wonderful magazine, and they go, I don't like the article about Sam Snead, and they don't know what do they know,
Yeah.
You really need, it's so rare to have a great editor, a great somebody that can really give you feedback on it. And that counts. That's good.
In a constructive way.
Yeah.
Yeah. They are rare. Very soon, we will be 1/6 of the way through 2025. That's more than 15% of the year. I know. It's shocking. Every day counts when you're chasing big goals, and that's why I drink AG1 every morning. As you can see, it's right here on my desk with me. Just one scoop every morning means I start each day with an automatic win. I'm giving my body and brain the nutrients and vitamins it needs to perform its best. Energy is up. Clarity is up. Gut health and digestion, up. Did you notice that everyone got sick over winter break? Not me. I even shook every hand in golf at the PGA show and still kept on chugging, no problem. That's thanks to the daily nutrients my immune system is getting thanks to AG1. So start stacking up those W's every morning with AG1. You do that, and your 2025 goals will fall into place. Best of all, AG1 is offering any new subscribers 10 additional travel packs. Here's what they look like. Throw them in the golf bag, in your backpack, briefcase, wherever you're going. They'll go along with you. You'll get a welcome kit and a bottle of D3K2 also in your first box. So make sure to check out drinkag1.com/BTS24 to get this offer. That's drinkag1.com/BTS24 to start building a healthy foundation for 2025. What is your personal experience with resistance today? What do you feel it around?
By the way, I thank you, Casey. I see your notes there. Thanks for preparing and thinking about this in advance. It's a great thing.
Yeah.
What is my it hasn't really changed. I mean, I still have tremendous resistance. The only thing, and you should, it should never go away, because the greater the resistance, in my opinion, the better the idea. The more important it is for you to do something, a book or whatever it is, the more resistance you're going to feel. So if you're onto something good, you should be feeling a lot of resistance.
It's a signal.
It is a signal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And particularly the form it takes for me mostly these days is self-doubt, where I'll just say, is this any good, this thing I'm working on? Can I pull it off? That kind of thing. And I'm now just in the last couple of years, I've kind of come to realize that if I'm not feeling self-doubt, something's wrong. So I try to keep telling myself, I'm glad I'm feeling self-doubt. That's a good sign.
You run to it.
And just keep going in the face of it.
Yeah. Do you still write every day?
Yeah.
You do.
Hmm.
Does it matter what you're writing or?
Different things provide more emotional sustenance to
Okay.
you. Like for me, fiction gives me the most good juju. Um, Nonfiction, like a book that might be sort of like The War of Art, one of the follow-ups to The War of Art, are I feel more like I'm trying to help people. I'm trying to offer something, and it's it's satisfying, but it's not satisfying like writing, something completely out of your imagination.
Sure. Yeah. What how much of yourself, on that note, how much of yourself is in The Legend of Bagger Vance in the characters?
Me personally,
Yeah, how much did you put in there of yourself?
I think there's a lot in the character of the young boy Hardy,
Okay.
because I grew up as a caddy from the time I was 11, and I kind of I know that feeling of trying to help somebody be great, and of being the kid, working for somebody that is really great,
Mhm.
So that part of, but a lot of that book is pure imagination. I don't know where it came from.
The muse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where did you caddy? Where'd you grow up caddying at?
In Armonk, New York, in Westchester County, at a place called the Whippoorwill Club.
Wow. That's good.
Do you know it?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You do?
Yes. Yeah.
What do you know about it?
Well, that area is just has amazing golf courses
Yeah.
everywhere, and it's got a fun name. I fly right over it on the way to is it Westchester Regional HPN Airport? It's actually one of the best aerial golf tours you can ever get.
I bet.
Fly in there.
Yeah, I've never done
pass
that. It
over
must be great. Yeah.
It is, yeah. You pass over Long Island
Yeah.
on the point,
It's a mecca.
over Shinnecock, over Country Club
yeah,
of Fairfield
yeah.
in Connecticut, over
Yeah.
Whippoorwill and Rye and Wingfoot and all these places. It's great.
Are you familiar with Tamarack?
Yes, they
Which
just
is
played
like
it.
a twin. They were
Yes.
by the same guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it's beautiful. What did you? Was that your was that your introduction into the game of golf?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you take to
It's
it instantly?
all in the authentic swing.
It
you know?
is, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I started when I was 11. A friend of mine brought me up there, still my best friend, because we wanted to make money, and, that was how you could make money. And, we did that all the way through college.
And you enjoyed it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I think back now about the loads we used to carry, I can't believe we did it. But everybody did it, but it was fun. Yeah, it was great.
Is it true that you had a list of people that you gave the caddy master a list of people that you would caddy for?
Yeah. I mean, he didn't pay attention to it, or, he didn't.
Why did you do that?
Because I loved the game and I wanted to study the game. And I only really wanted to, in my ideal world, I only wanted to caddy for like really good players with good swings. And I would absolutely study them, and shift to be behind them or at a certain angle so I could watch, study their grip, study everything about them,
Amazing. That's
because we couldn't afford golf lessons, so we had to just watch good players.
Yeah, that was and that was a great sort of on ramp to playing golf for so many young people. That's kind of
it's too bad it doesn't really exist anymore.
And there's many people doing good work, but caddying has become pretty pricey endeavor too for people to take along. There's some people with great ideas out there. I don't know, how much did you make per bag?
We got $4 a bag, and they would usually tip you $1. So a double was $10, which is a lot of money in those days.
It is, and now the base rates are kind of flattened out around $140 and
Really?
stuff. And so there's an idea. Some people in the Evans Scholar program, some people that run independent caddy yards, is like if we just lower the price per bag for these kids, you're more likely to take, somebody will take a caddy.
It's a great article. I'm sure you've done it already in Golf Journal. Yeah.
Yeah. They've just sort of been, it's an expensive day if you're going to play a $200 tee time plus the 140 caddy, plus you got to tip them.
Plus it's not the same fun. Like, I know you guys have been to Scotland and Ireland and places like that where you'll get, real pro old-time caddies, that are heading to the pub as soon as they go. And also you get the little kids that are great, that are coming up in the game and hardly can carry the bag, but that's great. I don't think you get that here at all.
Yeah. Well, you're going to run out of pro caddies if you don't get, the kid that can't tag along with them. It's another thing.
Although I guess a lot of caddies today are basically almost pros themselves,
They are.
Certainly on the tournament level, right?
Yes,
It's
yeah.
like somebody's brother who's like just as good as he is.
Well, if you go, the funny thing is, if you go to these clubs in New York or Long Island, those same guys that caddy there, and then they go down to Seminole, and then they go out to
Yeah.
Chicago. Like
Yeah.
they're professional amateur caddies, in a way, and they make a pretty good living, and they get to go to all these nice spots. But
Yeah.
there's not that many entry level jobs like that anymore.
True.
Yeah. So tell me this: the let's go back to the Bhagavad Gita. I'm very interested.
By the way, we can do another interview if you want to later on. If we don't have to finish everything.
I got to get you while you're here.
Okay.
So I've never read that text or really anything in Hinduism. When you say it's based, there's what did you take from that text?
Okay, I'm going to have to give you kind of a long answer here.
Please. Yes.
So the Bhagavad Gita is a kind of actually it's short. You can read it in an hour and a half,
Okay.
and it literally means the song of the Lord. And in the Bhagavad Gita, this is going to be a long story here. It takes place in India in an ancient time somewhere. Two armies are lined up across from each other: chariots, spearmen, charioteers, archers, that kind of thing. And we're on one side with the great warrior Arjuna, from which the name Ranulf comes from, and he has his charioteer, who is Krishna, i.e., God in human form. And as Arjuna is looking across at the opponents on the other side, he recognizes people that he knows, kinsmen and teachers, and he turns to Krishna and he says, "Drive my chariot out between the two armies and stop." And he doesn't there. He kind of lays down his arms. He says, "I see no point in fighting this war. If we kill these people, things are only going to be worse. I don't want to fight." So that's the scene in the Legend of Bagger Vance where Arjuna takes on his golf clubs and says, "I don't want to participate in this match." And at that point, his charioteer, Krishna, God, says to him, kind of reads him the riot act and says, "Stand up. You are a warrior. This is disgraceful. Da 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 da." And he sort of says to him, "As we fight this battle, I'm going to teach you the spiritual lessons of life about karma, previous lives, duality and non-duality, attachment and non-attachment, yoga, et cetera, et cetera." And there's even a section in there that kind of prefigures quantum mechanics called the field and the knower.
No kidding.
And which kind of a mind fucker when you read it. So I thought, I always loved that book, and I'm sure I only took like 1% of I could understand 1%.
But just that story structure, of the fight.
So I said, instead of a troubled warrior and his charioteer, how about a troubled golfer and his caddy? And the other interesting thing that I liked about it was when God appears in human form. If you think he never comes as a king or at the head of armies, and he comes as a servant. Like Jesus was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and Krishna comes as a charioteer. So I thought, in other words, the servant of Arjuna. So I thought the caddy is like the perfect, parallel to that. So that was sort of the idea for the Legend of Bagger Vance, that I would just steal that structure and then, tell a golf story around it.
So Bagger Vance is God in human form.
Right. In fact, it's really short for Bhagavan, which is a title of respect of Krishna, as in Bhagavad Gita.
Amazing. What are your thoughts on the movie?
Let me say that...
Because I think the ending confused me about, Bagger Vance's...
I'll be very kind and say that it's really hard to adapt a book into a movie, and the filmmakers had to decide to cut certain things out of it.
Yeah.
And one of the things they decided to cut out of it was the spiritual side of it, and that was a shame. But from the writer's point of view, if you make a deal to sell your material, then you have to accept what comes out.
Yep.
There really has never been, in my opinion, other than Caddyshack, a great golf movie, and there never will be, and I don't think.
No,
No,
you're not a Tin Cup guy?
It's too no, not at all. Even though I really admire Ron Shelton, and Bull Durham I thought was great.
Amazing movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Golf movies is a different. We actually just did a podcast on that. Comes out. Yeah.
Because there's no actors that can swing a club.
That's true. I thought Greatest Game Ever Played was pretty good.
That I didn't see, so I can't say anything
Shia
negative
LaBeouf,
about it.
not. Yeah, but it's the swing thing that for real golfers, that just kind of trips you up.
Yeah, it's funny.
As soon
Like
as you
the
see
Legend of
the bent left
Bagger
elbow,
Vance,
it's like, oh, okay.
people who are not golfers liked it. People who are golfers, the better the golfer you are, the more disappointed you are in the movie.
Yeah. I thought it was it's a fun movie. You have to read the book to really be able to compare the two and realize, like any other, book to screen sort of adaptation. Yeah. But it is it's an easy watch, and Matt Damon's handsome, and it works.
And he was a really nice guy in person.
Did you work on set at all?
No, I got one day on set.
Okay. How much of your, and I do promise we're winding down, but how much of your insights, these sort of big life insights, can you attribute to actually playing the game of golf? How much do you think it can? How much of it is
a great question?
Is it a fun exercise for you and a good walk in nature, and how much of it is a sort of a self-discovery tool?
It's a very deep self-discovery tool. And you could almost say practically everything that I think of as deeper philosophy comes from golf.
Really,
the whole fact of that you can have good days, you can have bad days. You're never going to conquer the game. It's never, that the harder you try, the worse you get, and all of those things. And that the attitude, you really have to be a professional attitude, right? It's the long game. You're in it for fun, and you can keep pressing ahead, but on a sane level. That's the way it works. And it's magical, and it's magical moments. It's transcendent, as we all know.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about, we get lucky and you hit a 2-iron, that goes right to the pin. That's amazing. And to me, it's not so amazing how great the pros are, but that amateurs who only never practice and only play one day a week can occasionally hit incredible shots, and play incredible runs. It's like, how did that ever happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a shot that sticks with you from your life?
I have a lot of shots that stick with me,
Yeah.
I've said sometimes that I've had girlfriends that I was with for 6 months and was totally in love with. I can't remember their name, but I can remember a 5-iron that I hit when I was 13 years old, at Whippoorwill.
Yes, yeah. I have a 5-iron too that I hit when I was 14 that I think about probably more often than any. Well, I can still feel it.
That's the thing. Yeah, it
was the first time it matched up what I saw and what I did. And I do think that was probably the start of a love affair that will never end.
My theory about that is that life exists on 2 levels. And on the spiritual level, the higher level where we don't have bodies and where we can kind of project the world the way we want to do, like in a dream, and create a dream, when a great golf shot is that moment in the physical world that parallels that, right? Where you envision it and then you actually do it. And like in the material life, human life, that never happens, right? It's like 1 in a million and that's why I think we idolize guys like Tiger or somebody that seem to be able to do it all the time. It's like, how did they do that,
Yeah, amazing. I never thought about that. So you have these 2, did you call them dimensions?
Yeah, or levels or planes, whatever you want to say.
And
there probably are infinite planes, but there certainly are 2.
And a pure golf shot stacks those 2 right on top of each other.
Yeah, what I was talking about the ego and the self before, about a writer, the ego is this level, the material level, where we have a physical body, and above it is the higher, the spiritual plane. And as an artist, we're trying to get from here to here, because this is where the good stuff is, and try to bring it back down.
Amazing.
And that's a mind shift,
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. All right. So
golf is the same way.
It is. And I'll leave you with this question, which, is not a very easy closing question, but, a big part of Bagger Vance and your work and this golf memoir you wrote is this idea of your authentic swing. how do people? First of all, what does that mean? And second of all, how does everyone get to a place in life where they can be, their authentic selves or swing their authentic
That's
swing?
an easy question. Yeah. That idea, the idea of the authentic swing, kind of came about. It's just really sort of amazing to me in the middle of a sentence as I was working on the book. It wasn't an idea that I had before. And as it kind of came out, I thought, fuck, this is the center of this book, And it's really, I forgot who wrote it, but it might have been a psychologist named Karen Horney. It might have been somebody else who wrote a book called The Authentic Self.
Mm-hmm.
And so the authentic swing is the parallel for that. And I'm a believer, as you know from that book, that we come into this world not as blank slates, that we can be anything we want to be. I think we come into this world and we already are a highly refined and individuated soul, and with certain gifts, certain limitations, certain crimes we may have committed in previous lives or whatever. But our job in this lifetime, I believe, is to find out who we are and to become that, and not try to be some other thing that we're never going to be able to be. And I think, so if you think about the golf swing, like Bagger Vance says in the book, have you ever seen identical twins swing golf clubs? Their swings are completely different, right, from day one. And also, if you think about Jim Furyk's swing, there's no way he could swing some other swing. He came into this life with that, or Fred Couples' swing, right? Nobody swings like him. Or Scotty Scheffler, nobody swings like him, right? And so at least as a parallel for the authentic self, for who we really are we a writer? Are we a dancer? Are we a mother? Are we meant to, save humanity in one way or another? There's no point in trying to be some other stuff that's not you. We already are this person. And so that's what the authentic swing means. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't refine a swing. Okay,
good, yeah.
But, we all kind of, the first time, if we had videos of the first swing you guys took when you were 4 years old,
yes,
and we could put it on the screen right now, we would recognize it. Right?
I have it. Yes.
Am I right?
Inside, threw it, slammed it over the top. Still fight it every day. Yeah.
But, I think we are born with that gift, whatever it is, and to find it and believe in it, that's what we're here for, I think.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you for the time.
Hey,
Mr. Pressfield.
Thank you, Casey.
Yes,
thanks a lot.
Long time coming.
We can do this again if you want to.
I would love to. Well, let's do 3 hours on.
And congratulations, you guys, on Golf Journal and this incredible, aspiration that you guys have. It's something that's really needed, and it's really great that you're doing it. And I take my hat off to you.
Thank you so
for
much.
The hard work and the belief, the self-belief it took to do this.
Yes, thank you so much. We got a great team, and we're going to get you a new set of clubs, and we'll get you out there and, with the rest of the gang on our event series.
Okay, that would be great. Invite me back to Ponte Vedra or something like that.
I would love that. Yeah, thank you, sir.